in the room now.
Okay. Good morning, Amy, Caroline and Reese, who are joining us this morning. I'm going to start in a few minutes' time and see how many people we get who do join in. So I'll start with proper full details then. Feel free in the meantime to write in the chat function an introduction to yourself and your role for each other really as much as anything else, so you can see about networking and see who else is involved. The talk this morning is going to be a lightning talk. It's going to be just 10 minutes long. So it's lots of kind of overview of different things, but there will be a Q&A afterwards, and it's entirely up to you how long you want to stick around for and anything that you want to ask. Thank you for the introductions that we've got from a couple of people so far. And good morning, Thomas, who's joined us as well. I've just said to the other participants who've joined so far to introduce themselves in the chat function. And name and role, which seems to be standard. It's always useful to know the different types of positions that we've got, what kind of a background, who you might be working with, whether you're working with the society, sports club committee members, full-time officers, part-time officers, whichever volunteers that you have. So I will talk about that a little bit and how the principles of success coaching can be adapted to that, but that might come a little bit more in the Q&A because I'm trying to give a bit of an overview to success coaching as a whole. I make it 1 minute past 10, so I'm going to wait for maybe 1 more minute and see who we get join us. But if anybody comes after that stage, it shouldn't matter too much. Okay, so I'm going to make a start, but I'll see if anybody else comes in, and I might, if there's anything vital they've missed, kind of catch them briefly up to speed. So my name is Dave Lochte. I'm the Student Voice and Development Manager for the University of Derby Union of Students. Apologies, there's no camera of me this morning. I'm sure you're not too bothered by that, but with my PC, I don't have a webcam on it, and if I was to do it on another device, I have concerns that anything else I have in the household would not be able to do the presentation as well. This is just part of kind of lockdown and doing this from home. Welcome Lloyd, who's just joined as well. As I say, so I work for the University of Derby Union of Students, but in the presentation today I'm drawing upon lots of different experience from other roles that I've done previously, and partly translating it into this role. So I've called it Success Coaching 101. It's a really big topic that I can't really cover in 10 minutes, but I'm going to give as much of an overview as I can, focus it on student leaders to help them to help themselves. So it's about transforming student leader development through impactful conversations, building upon best practice in coaching. What we'll aim to do is to have those impactful conversations and to use those coaching techniques to empower the students in their roles and then beyond, to apply the theory and best practice, and that comes from US-based student success coaching and UK personal tutoring that I'll talk about, and it aims towards having a maximum impact but minimum time, because we're all busy within our roles and we have lots of different student leaders we may work with. It's all applicable online, which is fortunate at the moment because a lot more of our interactions are being online, and it can be applied to all of those different student groups there. And if there's anything that's not listed there, I would suggest it can be applied to those as well. The principles are very much applicable to different environments. So the first thing that I'll build upon is my personal experience of student success coaching in the United States, where it is a lot more of an established field. I worked for a year at the University of New Orleans, and I was part of the first year experience team within enrolment services. So it was on the university side. Unions are a little different over there. Among retention specialists and early alert programs as part of a centralized induction. And I ran a student success module as part of that. So it was for all students that it would be, but I'm applying this for student leaders within unions. It links to personal tutoring and academic advising, but it was very much built upon the principles of coaching, which comes from the International Coach Federation, and NACADA, which is a very well-established global community for academic advising. It focuses largely around one-to-one work, but it also can be applied to group tutorials. And there is some research that shows that it does have an impact upon retention and success, as I've referenced there. We reference this very heavily in a book that I was fortunate to be involved with a couple of years ago, which was about effective personal tutoring in higher education. We used the title personal tutoring rather than advising, focusing on the traditional academics that support students, but very much that that focus, it could be applied to other roles. And there's a book that we're in the process of working on at the moment, which there's a call of contributions out for, which we've added the advisor title, so it's broadened it, and that would really very much apply to Union of Students advisors. So we'd very much like anybody to submit to that. The slides will be available afterwards, and you can click on the link to do so. But the reason this is relevant is because there's a chapter of that book, and there will be a part of the upcoming book which will focus on solution-focused coaching with students. So why solution-focused coaching? What is it? It aims towards unlocking a person's potential to learn rather than teaching them. And I think that distinction is really, really important. When student leaders do well, it's them that's doing the learning. It's not us telling them what they need to do. No matter how many years you've been around Union of Students, and I've been an officer myself, it's really easy for me to tell my stories as to what I've done and bore them to death with that. But what I try to do is to empower them to learn and ask the right questions. So it comes from therapy, and anybody who's ever had an interaction with a counsellor, you'll find that they don't tend to tell you solutions to your problems. They ask you questions, so hopefully you try and find things out yourself. So when you're working with student leaders, the suggestion is that you'll focus with the students on where they want to get to. It's them that drives that, and the skills and knowledge that they need to get there. Rather than spending excessive time exploring the problem or issue. And I think that's something that is very easy to fall into, and I myself have done. When you have a student leader that comes to you and says, I've fallen out with students in this way, I'm having this challenge, you want to fix the issue. But the longer term objective is to give them the skills so that they can do it themselves. So as a brief overview, there's lots of information I'll have on these slides. I'm going to skip through it, but hopefully it should give you a little bit of information. The idea is that positive change can occur quickly. So you define specific goals that they can work towards, but it's very much the student must be self-directed. It's important that you in this need to have that empathy and rapport. If you're asking them to sort out their issues or challenges themselves, then you need to have that as a baseline to start with. They need to know that you are listening to them, that you do care, and to try and get that rapport with them. And then you try to move towards their future goals, very much driven by them, and including the knowledge and abilities that they have at the moment as a basis to build upon. You enable and facilitate, again, just the different terminology rather than saying that you're giving them information, you're teaching them. You try to make them empowered so that they will coach themselves in the future. The success coaching that I did in the US was 1 semester. It rarely went beyond that point. So you wanted to give them a kind of a hit of the support that they need that they can then use in the future. Looking at another way is something that you can explain to them. If they come to you with a problem, you can talk about how that can be an opportunity, how everything can be a way that you can develop yourselves. So that should aim towards supporting positivity, that when they come across challenges in the future, they can be more resilient and can adapt to it themselves. So there are benefits to this for the coachee, that it can improve their performance, it can improve their motivation, their commitment, and I think this is very important within student leaders, that the ones who excel that's kind of the baseline as to what they need to have. They need to be passionate and motivated as to what they do, and then they can get rapid personal growth, which is what we want to give to all of our leaders. It can give them a greater sense of purpose, and they can find they've got improved communication and relationships. I know at least one person in the room that works with student societies, so you deal with a lot of conflicts. Hopefully through these coaching techniques, you can get them to be better, to make sure that that conflict not doesn't happen, but they're able to deal with it and to stop it from becoming an issue they have to go to a member of the staff for. I'm not going to go into the details of the coach benefits, but there are benefits to the coach that are listed there as well, that you can apply these skills in management in lots of other different things that you do. So a lot of coaching is about questions. As I said, with comparing it to therapy and counselling, you're not giving solutions. You're asking the right questions so that they can find the solutions. And obviously that needs to be open questions. It needs to be probing questions to get them to be talking. It needs to be focused to establish the real situation and real actions. It needs to have a bottom line, but you try and avoid leading questions. So there are a few different examples on there. The obvious open questions: what, where, when, how. Why is an interesting one, because you can be judgmental within that, so you use that as well as you can. And kind of probing, asking them to tell you more about certain things, asking them, making it focused. What were your feelings at the time? What action will you take? And very much to focus upon the student as you're doing so. Yeah, just avoid those. Don't you think it'd be better if? Why don't you do the following? It's really easy to do that, and I have done them. But if you can have that in the back of your mind as you're saying these things, then you'll use them less and less. So in terms of making it solution focused, that particular type of coaching, you look at what you're aiming to achieve in a solution rather than what's wrong with what you're doing. So if you just quickly look at the different questions that you've got on there, you look at how you know you've achieved it. How did you know how you did that? What might you do differently? What have you done before that worked? What did you do to contribute to the outcome? And once you find yourself asking these questions, it gives you a certain tone of voice, which is very supportive to the students and gives them that empowerment that they feel they can achieve things. If you're focusing on the negative, what obstacles are there, then that can create a different mindset for the student that they will then take forward. And I'm very short on time, so I'm getting close towards the end, but there's extra slides that I will talk about. But what I wanted to just show was the range of different models of success coaching that you can utilize. The one that I prefer is the Oscar model. There are other ones that I'll show in the other slides during the Q&A if you'd like to, and you can have the slides afterwards. But I think this sums up a lot of different ways that I quite subtly with students try and use coaching. So I think you're talking to them about the outcome from the start. I think that's the first question you should ask. What do you want from this? What would success look and feel like? Because you can't say at the end, it's like a learning objectives in a session. You can't say unless you kind of establish that at the beginning. Scaling I found really, really powerful and really, really simple to do. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel at the moment? And when you've asked that, then you can say, okay, so if you're at 7, what does 8 look like? What does 9 look like? What are the steps that you need to do to get there? And then you build upon the knowledge and resources. What skills and resources have you got already? It really can, if a student is feeling quite negative, that's a good way to turn them around into a positive, because people want to think of the positive skills that they have, and everybody does have them. And if you're the type of person that wants to support students, you'll be looking for these things with them. If they are at the low end of the scale, you can ask them when they've scaled higher before, what has made them feel good as the points in their role as a student leader where they've had some success. What did that look like? How did you feel at the time? And then you talk about those steps, the affirm and action, what will get you from wherever you are at the moment to +1 within the scale, what needs to happen, and you get them to break that down and to take ownership of it so that they do it. Now, your interactions with student leaders may be intermittent. You may have regular meetings with them, you may have committee meetings with them, but try and pick that up with them. This can be a formal meeting as a one-to-one, or it can be a conversation in a hallway. If you can ask them what's better, what helped, how they will sustain this and what they've learned, and it's their reflection that will take it forward from that point. So I'm not going to go through the rest of the slides, and I'm going to give people an opportunity to ask questions at that point. There are other different modules that are on there. Again, we're very, very limited time within a lightning talk. Hopefully that gives you a very brief overview of it. I'm not selling the book because I get 50p per copy, but if anybody is interested, I can give you the details of it and go into a lot more depth. So are there any questions or answers, or sorry, any questions that you'd like to put into the question and answer box, which is slightly separate from the chat? I can also see the chat as well if there's any observations that people want to have. But please feel free to put any questions in there. Past this stage, you're not obliged to stay because it's a lightning talk, but I will carry on talking until you tell me not to. So if a question comes in, I'll respond to that. Or I will say the other models that you have. So again, it's a similar thing, just looking at it from a different way. My view on academic models and theory generally is that there's never one best way of doing things. There's the different ways you adapt of them. So I prefer the Oscar model, but I'd use others alongside it. I would say with Bathe, what's troubling you most, that sounds to me quite negative, and that doesn't fit within the kind of the